Now to our other top story at 5. Jarvis Butts, the man convicted for the murder of 13-year-old Ziyah Harris and a string of other sexual assaults, was found dead this morning inside his prison cell.
That's right. It happened at the Charles Egler Reception and Guidance Center over in Jackson.
He was already gone, not missing, not on the run, not hiding in some motel room with a burner phone and a head start. He was gone in the worst possible way, found unresponsive in his prison cell on the morning of March 26, 2026, just 14 days after a Wayne County judge handed him a 35 to 60-year sentence for the murder of a 13-year-old girl. 14 days. Jarvis Butts had pleaded guilty. He had sat in that courtroom and accepted a deal that required him to tell investigators where he dumped Ziyah Harris's body. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office said he fulfilled that condition. They said they were satisfied with the statement. And then the Michigan Department of Corrections called it. Jarvis Butts, age 43, was dead at the Charles Egler Reception and Guidance Center in Jackson, Michigan. Authorities opened an investigation and classified the death as a suicide. He had been in state custody for 2 weeks. Let that settle for a moment. Because this is the thing about this case that makes it so uniquely devastating. Legally, the system got what it wanted. There was a guilty plea. There was a sentence. There was, technically, a statement about where he left her. And yet, as of this recording, Ziyah Harris has not been found. Her family cannot bury her. The most detailed account of what happened to her died with the man who caused it. His cousin, Roxy Humphreys, spoke to local media after Butts died. She said what a lot of people were thinking, that it was a cowardly way out, that he made his bed and got to lie in it. But in the same breath, she said the family was terrified that with him gone, they would never find Ziyah's remains. "We'll never find her," she said, and those words are still hanging in the air over Detroit. The court got its guilty plea, the prison system got its inmate, but Ziyah's family still didn't get their daughter back. Welcome back to Blood Betrayal Files, or if this is your first time here, you just walked into the middle of one of the most disturbing cases we've ever covered. In today's chapter, we're diving deep into the disappearance and death of 13-year-old Ziyah Harris, and the man who confessed, got sentenced, and then vanished from the earth before her family could lay her to rest. If you're not already subscribed, hit that button right now. You're going to want every single part of this series. And drop in the comments where you're watching from, because I want to know who's sitting in the dark with me tonight. All right, let's go back to the beginning. January 9, 2024 was a Tuesday. Ziyah Harris, 13 years old, a Detroit middle schooler, stepped off her school bus at Cornwall and 3 Mile Drive. It was the kind of moment that happens thousands of times a day in every city in America. A kid getting off the bus. Backpack, jacket, the particular relief of the school day being over. The sidewalk familiar, the route home known. There was nothing in that moment that looked like the last time she would ever be seen in public. But she never made it home. In the early days after she disappeared, reporting suggested that investigators did not immediately frame the case as an abduction. That detail is important because it shaped how fast the urgency escalated and how long certain questions went unanswered. Days passed, then weeks. Ziyah's name circulated on missing persons alerts, on social media, in Detroit news coverage. Her family waited. Her community searched. The cold of a Michigan January pressed on. Then investigators started finding things. Near the Rouge River, off 7 Mile and Bourg in Detroit, searchers recovered items believed to belong to Ziyah. A pink jumpsuit turned inside out, a black jacket, a red and black shoe, and a school ID. The clothing was described as fresh, no significant discoloration, no signs of prolonged outdoor exposure, no animal damage. That word, fresh, is one of those details that lodges itself in your chest and doesn't leave, because it tells you the clothes had not been there long. Whatever happened had happened recently, and whoever left them, they had not been careful, or had not cared. Investigators were building a picture. By August 2024, prosecutors were reviewing a warrant request. On September 27, 2024, over 8 months after Ziyah vanished, Wayne County prosecutors charged 41-year-old Jarvis Butts with first-degree premeditated murder, child sexually abusive activity, and second-degree criminal sexual conduct involving a person under 13. They said the evidence was overwhelming. They said that, without a body, by the time police publicly named the man they believed killed Ziyah Harris, this was no longer just the story of a missing girl. It was the story of what investigators say had been happening around her long before she ever stepped off that bus. Here is where the story changes shape entirely. Jarvis Butts was not a stranger. He was not some shadow that drifted in from the margins of Ziyah's life. He was, in the way that only makes it worse, someone the family knew. He shared a child with Ziyah's aunt. That connection made him a fixture, an uncle figure by proximity, someone whose presence would not raise flags, someone whose access to the family would not have seemed like a warning sign to anyone watching from the outside. Prosecutors alleged the grooming began in 2022. Ziyah would have been 11 years old. Court evidence included explicit text messages between them. She called him Bae. Phone data tracked their movements on January 9, 2024, the day she disappeared. Records showed they met after school, stopped at his repair shop, drove together to Ypsilanti, returned to Detroit, and checked into a motel that night. That motel is the last confirmed location where Ziyah Harris was alive. Prosecutors alleged Butts killed her after learning she was pregnant with his child. Read that again. He was 41, she was 13, and the allegation is that when he found out she was carrying his baby, he decided to make sure she could never tell anyone. The clothing found near the Rouge River, the pink jumpsuit, the jacket, the shoe, they were found in the same general area where Butts would later admit, under oath, that he dumped her body. But this case is not just about Ziyah. That is something the reporting on this story has circled around carefully, and it deserves to be stated plainly. On February 12, 2026, when Butts entered his guilty pleas, he did not plead guilty to one case. He pleaded guilty in 6. In addition to Ziyah's murder, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office said the other cases involved victims who were 4 years old, 7 years old, 8 or 9 years old, and 13 years old. 4 different minors, 5 separate counts of criminal sexual conduct on top of the murder. Prosecutors said his method was deliberate. He targeted and befriended women specifically to gain access to their daughters. This was not opportunism. This was a system, a practiced, calculated pattern of behavior designed to look like a relationship while functioning as a trap. 4 years old, 7, 8 or 9, 13. Ziyah was 13. Some of the other girls in these cases were even younger. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe victims deserve to be remembered and families deserve answers, subscribe and stay with this channel. Because some cases disappear from the headlines long before the people left behind ever get justice. For most of 2025, Jarvis Butts was headed toward trial. The case was scheduled for February 23, 2026. Prosecutors were prepared to call dozens of witnesses. They had phone records, location data, the clothing evidence, the text messages, testimony from multiple victims, and what they had consistently described as overwhelming evidence of guilt. This was not going to be a fragile prosecution. This was going to be a public reckoning. And then, less than 2 weeks before it was set to begin, Butts entered guilty pleas in all 6 cases. The agreement was structured carefully. He would plead guilty to second-degree murder in Ziyah's case, not first-degree, which had been the original charge. He would also plead guilty to 4 counts of second-degree criminal sexual conduct and 1 count of third-degree criminal sexual conduct in the other 5 cases. The sentence, 35 to 60 years for the murder, with 10 to 15 years on the sexual conduct charges running concurrently. But the part of that deal that mattered most to Ziyah's family was the condition buried inside it. Jarvis Butts was required to provide a truthful statement regarding the location of her body. Think about what that moment meant. After 2 years of not knowing, after searches and false leads, and the agonizing weight of a family that could not hold a funeral because there was nothing to bury, there was suddenly a legal mechanism forcing the man who knew the truth to say it out loud. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy later stated that her office was satisfied with the statement Butts provided, that only certain family members who had lived with Ziyah were permitted to hear it, that the details were not made public. And here is the part that fractures everything. Even after that statement, Detroit police were still searching, still investigating. The Rouge River near 7 Mile and Bourg, the area where those fresh clothes had been found more than 2 years earlier, remained the primary focus. But there were no remains recovered, no announcement that she had been found, no funeral. The deal gave the court what it needed. It gave the prosecutors what they needed, and the family was still left standing at the edge of the Rouge River, looking at the water, waiting. He admitted guilt. He made a deal. He gave a statement. And still, the one place that mattered most remained out of reach. March 12, 2026. Wayne County Circuit Court Judge Nicholas Hathaway sentenced Jarvis Butts to 35 to 60 years in state prison for the second-degree murder of Ziyah Harris, with the sexual conduct sentences running concurrently. In the American criminal justice system, that is as close to a life sentence as many defendants ever receive for a single charge. For a man who was 43 at the time of sentencing, it was, functionally, the rest of his life behind bars. The courtroom that day was not quiet. Family members gave victim impact statements. There was sobbing, there was shouting, there was what reporters described simply as chaos.
It has been 2 years and 2 months since I reported Ziyah missing. I want you to know that my life will never be the same. I had to remind myself that my niece Ziyah isn't coming back.
I hope that every victim and my niece and nephews can...
The sound of people who had been carrying something unbearable for over 2 years and had finally been given a microphone. Butts reportedly looked down through most of it and said very little. What do you say in that moment? What is the right word for a 35-tominous 60-year sentence handed to the man who groomed your 13-year-old relative, made her pregnant, and then killed her and hid her body? Is it justice? Partial justice, a number on a page that means nothing when the child is still missing. For the family of Ziyah Harris, sentencing was not the ending. It could not be, because a sentence is a verdict on the living. Ziyah is still out there somewhere, in the mud and current of the Rouge River, maybe, or somewhere close. And until she is found, there is no ending. There is only this unbearable middle. 14 days later, Jarvis Butts was found unresponsive in his cell at the Charles Edgeler Reception and Guidance Center. Staff attempted life-saving measures. They were not successful. The Michigan Department of Corrections, along with Michigan State Police, confirmed the death was being investigated as a suicide. 2 weeks, that is how long he lasted inside the system he had spent years evading. For him, prison lasted 2 weeks. For Ziyah's family, the waiting did not end. Detroit police issued a statement after Butts died. It read, in part, that their work was not done, that they would follow every lead on the homicide, that they were continuing efforts to locate Ziyah Harris's body to help bring closure to her family. The Rouge River laid, the location Butts identified in his plea statement, remains the primary focus of their search. And as of this recording, no remains have been publicly recovered. There is something uniquely cruel about a case that moves so far through the legal system and still cannot reach its most basic resolution. Every procedural step happened the way it was supposed to. The investigation built its case. The charges were filed, the plea was negotiated, the sentence was handed down, the condition about the body's location was included, and prosecutors say it was met. Every checkbox was checked. Ziyah Harris is still missing. The family has spoken about this with a grief that is almost impossible to sit with. One family member called Butts a demonic force. Another said he got to lay in the bed he made. And in the same breath, that terrifying fear, we may never find her now. With the one person who knew exactly what he did, exactly where he went, exactly how he hid her evidence, gone, dead, 14 days into his sentence, the practical knowledge of where her remains rest may have narrowed further than anyone is willing to say publicly. Some of Naziyah's family members have started advocating for something they're calling a Naziyah Rapid Response Recovery Team, a dedicated effort to help families in similar situations, cases where children go missing and the trail goes cold before anyone can bring them home. That is the kind of thing that happens when a family runs out of answers but refuses to run out of fight. This case involved not just one victim, not just one family shattered. It involved girls as young as 4 years old. It involved a predator who built an entire architecture of access around ordinary domestic relationships, sisters, aunts, mothers, daughters, and weaponized every one of them. The court record is a document of methodical, repeated harm to children who had no reason to believe the adults around them were anything other than what they appeared to be. Naziyah was 13. She had her whole life in front of her. She got off a school bus on a Tuesday afternoon in January, and the world consumed her, and the man responsible confessed and was sentenced and died and took whatever he still knew with him into the ground. Detroit police are still searching. Her family is still waiting. And somewhere in or near the Rouge River, if the water and the years and the current have left anything to find, Naziyah Harris is still out there, waiting to come home. She deserves that. Her family deserves that. And the least the rest of us can do is refuse to let her name disappear. Before you go, if this case hit you the way it hit me, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to Blood Betrayal Files, not just for this case, but because there are families just like Naziyah's who are still in the middle of their wait, and they need people paying attention. Hit the like button so this story reaches more people. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you know anything at all, related to Naziyah Harris or the search for her remains in the Detroit area, the Detroit Police Department's homicide unit is still actively investigating. That tip could be the one that finally brings her home. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what part of this case is sitting heaviest with you right now. I read every single one. Naziyah, we haven't forgotten you.